This video is sponsored by PCBWay.
Hi there, this is Seth Schaefer from Team Jessica's Robotics, and in today's video we're going to be talking about this guy, Shrapnel Mine version 2, or just NHRL Mine as it remains after the event. Shrapnel Mine competed at the February 1st NHRL event, and yes, I am kind of late posting this video 3 months after the event happened, but that's nothing because there's actually 3 other events that my bots have competed at that you haven't seen the footage for yet. First off, I mailed my Antweight Sonic to the RCL champs because despite being the 80th ranked Antweight, apparently nobody volunteered to go to that event, and so somehow at rank 80, Sonic was allowed to compete there, but it would require me flying all the way across the country to California to bring it, and that would have cost many hundreds of dollars I didn't feel like spending. So instead I mailed the robot to a guy named Rohan, and he drove the bot in my stead and has the footage for that and has recorded a script actually for it, or written a script for that video. So I'm not sure if I'll be reading that or he will, but at some point we'll get that recap to you. So that happened just a couple weeks ago or a week ago. Before that was Shrapnel Mine in February, and then a month before that I had Division version 4.5 competing in January at Mass Destruction, which I also will be making a recap for in the next several weeks. And then before that, Sonic was competing again at Maker Battle at the end of last year, which I also haven't made the recap for reasons that I'll get into when I post that one. So lots of footage coming up of different events and other videos I've got planned, so make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified when those videos come out. Also, don't forget you can support me on Patreon. I posted on my website recently a notice about this, and I've posted in the NHRL Discord about it quite a bit, but the tariffs have a very large impact on my business selling combat robot parts to help people like you get started in combat robotics. I would really appreciate it if you guys would support me on Patreon, because right now I work full-time making robot parts and selling them to builders like you. Parts like the ones that are in this robot right here. I've got my Blitz Pro drive motors on the drive system, and also another one for actuating the slider for the sliding weapon system. I also developed this custom hub motor that's used mostly for Antweight robots, but I put it on this Beetleweight robot, which is 3 pounds instead of a 1 pound Antweight, because it was the most convenient way of mounting it to a moving slider system. And I developed this knowing that it would be relatively durable and simple enough to use in this application. And for the most part, it does seem to work fairly well, though there are some limitations, of course. But, you know, making and selling parts like this, I'm operating out of the United States, of course. My business is based right here in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I do all the engineering design work myself. I get custom versions or completely custom from scratch designed parts manufactured overseas because the production capacity just doesn't really exist here in the United States, and it will not for many years to come, even if the tariffs that have been proposed recently remain in place. But that means in the meantime, I've got like $20,000 worth of parts that I ordered, which are sitting in warehouses or factories in China right now that I can't really afford to import until and if the tariffs drop to a more sane level. So yeah, a lot of the parts that I sell have been going out of stock recently, and that means money's been pretty tight for me recently. Like, I've got a safety net built up and I'll be okay, but it does put the future of Just Cause Robotics LLC somewhat in jeopardy, so I am still somewhat concerned about that. But the good news for you guys is that I can still make at least a bit of money with PCBWay sponsorships. So that means you get to see a few extra YouTube videos that you might not have seen before, because gotta get that cash money. So this video is sponsored by PCBWay, and they machined this awesome CNC machined aluminum slider carriage mount. I tried a 3D printed one in the past and it exploded, so that did not work at all, but this piece has been holding up perfectly well in all the fights that this bot has had so far. It's machined out of 7075 aluminum, and it's quite complex. I do have my own CNC machine, and I might be making more parts like that myself in the future, but in the past it hasn't been a good investment of my time to make really complicated parts on my machine because it's just kind of slow and inefficient. It's designed more for prototyping in metal and making production parts in softer materials like plastic and wood. But if I need a really complicated and accurate part made in metal, I'm happy to send it out to PCBWay because they always do fantastic work and can get the part to me in just a few weeks. I know with the tariffs, their parts still might be a little more expensive, but if you compare a lot of local shops here in the United States, you might find they're still surprisingly price competitive. So make sure to check out PCBWay at the link in the description, and you can get 5% off of your first order. That ad read out of the way, let's get into the actual event recap. So, like I had kind of alluded to before, Shrapnel Mine version 2 has competed before. Of course, it competed in a version 1.0 form at a couple events, and that was all the way back in 2020, 2021. It competed first at an event called Sword, which is at the Penn College of Technology, and then at an event in New Jersey that was called Labor Day Disarray back in 2021. And that older version of the bot looked nothing like this one. This is what Shrapnel Mine version 1 looked like, except there was a motor with a blade on here. And the idea was that I had this linkage system that was designed to get under opponents and scoop them forward, and then I'd send the saw blade straight into their undersides. But this linkage system was extremely complicated, and more importantly, extremely heavy. It didn't leave wheels up front to add extra front wheels, so the bot was super front heavy with all of the weight off of the wheels and back, which made it kind of difficult to drive and push robots around. So I decided to change to a four-wheel drive system, and this kind of punching mechanism for the blade to make it so that I could just passively get under robots and then send the blade into them, kind of like Tantrum. Though this is not necessarily directly inspired by Tantrum. I went around the process of designing this without looking at Tantrum for reference at all, really. I just kind of was like, I want four-wheel drive and a punching system, and completely went from scratch from there. And I designed around, like I said, parts that I developed, like my Blitz Pro drive motors, because I already have them, and they work really well in this kind of application. The last time this bot competed, or the only time that this bot competed prior to NHRL anyway, was at the RCE event in Fitchburg, Massachusetts last year. And at that event, I had, I think, 5 fights. My last fight of the day was against a extremely vicious two-wheel drive beater bar named Basics, and it completely wrecked this bot. I was hoping to spend a lot more time upgrading it before this event, but due to my own procrastination, which is definitely a lesson I learned the harsh way is a bad time for this bot, I had a lot of problems. First of all, I ordered some lids and base plates for this event. They are still in the packaging they got sent in because CNC Madness sent them to the wrong address, which meant that they didn't show up in time. They arrived like 2 weeks after the event happened, so I instead scrambled to machine my very own carbon fiber lid for the top of the bot, and I only had one base plate that I had machined back before the Fitchburg event, and that was it. So I had basically no spares for the 2 key structural components of the bot. I just had a bunch of spare 3D printed parts, which is not great, as you can probably imagine. Another procrastination thing that was entirely my fault was basically the electronics setup. So last time this bot competed, I had a much bigger 4-in-1 ESC back here, kind of stuck out the top, and it made it so driving upside down was a nightmare and kind of a big problem. So I wanted to switch to a smaller one, but I also thought it would be a great idea to experiment with ELRS receivers and using CRSF communication, which I won't get into exactly what that means, but essentially I had to change the speed controller firmware to work with a new communication protocol, change out the receiver, and then nothing worked. I spent many hours, 2 days before the competition, 1 day before the competition, trying to get that to work, and probably after like 9 hours of rewiring the robot many times, swapping the receiver twice, I eventually just ended up going back to using the tried and true FS2A receiver, which had always worked for me in the past, and that worked great with this. But because I had switched the ESC to an experimental AM32 firmware, I wasn't really familiar with the settings because they had a bunch of names changed, and that made it difficult for me to configure this properly. So I ended up with the slider basically running at like 1/3 of the linear speed that it was supposed to operate at, and had no idea why. Rewired absolutely everything like so many times. This has been the worst. This has been like 3 days from hell trying to get this robot to actually function properly. It's still not 100% there. The slider is really slow moving because I have some setting wrong on the 4-in-1 ESC, but yeah. But I got the robot finally working like the day of the event and in the morning before my first fight. So the fact it was working at all was already a miracle, and I wasn't about to mess with the settings any further to try and get it to work a bit better. On top of all of that, my very first fight of the day was against Basics, the robot that completely annihilated the bot in its last fight at RCE. So definitely a bit of an uphill battle there. Let's see how that fight went. So yeah, going into this fight, I had made some durability improvements to the bot at least. And the last time that I fought Basics, a lot of the cheaty Ultra PA parts that I used all exploded, so I switched to an experimental material that is called TPU-CF. It's a carbon fiber infused TPU, which I was hoping would have some of the properties that I wanted nylon to have, which is a bit of flex, but still good impact toughness, and that actually seemed to work pretty well. I didn't have any of those parts fail in the bot, and they were supporting the front wheels and the slider mechanism. So at least that seemed to allow the bot to hold up a bit better, but you can see I had some drive troubles really early on in this fight. That was because I had a screw just pop out that was sticking down below where my wheels could reach, so I wasn't having full contact with the floor, although both drive motors were still working. I said the bot could drive upside down now. I didn't say it could do it well, necessarily. Still definitely needs some larger wheels, I think.
Try harder, can I see your drive?
Not worth taking more damage at this point. Alright, post basics fight damage inspection here. So it looks like one of the drive sides probably went down. I'm not sure why yet. This connector got mangled, but everything was still working. This is the slider motor. As far as I can tell, that was still working at the end of the fight. Honestly, it feels freer now than when the fight started. The hub motor was still working just fine. That seems completely undamaged, but this broke loose. Oh shoot, this broke loose from its mounting. That's not good, because I don't have a way of holding that in place now if those screw mounts are gone. Probably should have thought of that. Whoopsies. Alright, so I did a quick function test, and absolutely everything is still working. However, I will have to use hot glue to hold this in place now. So I'll probably take off the back just so I can access that. And I'll put some glue on this connector and try and tuck it away better next time. But honestly, all the motors are still working just fine. I don't have any pinion slip on the drive or on the slider, I don't think. Yeah, no. So I think I'm just gonna unbolt the back, try and reprogram the slider channel settings with help from somebody who knows better than me what to do to make it faster, and then should be pretty much good to go. Yeah, so that didn't do super well. I tapped out pretty early because I, again, have no spares for the bot, so I didn't want it to get completely annihilated and then not be able to get into my second fight and have any chance of getting into the tournament. The way that NHRL works, if you're new here, they have 3 qualifier fights. Well, 2 qualifier fights if you win both of them, a third if you don't. If you go 2 losses, then you don't get to fight in a single elimination bracket. But if you have 1 win and 1 loss, you get a third qualifier, a chance for a second win. And if you get 2 wins, then you do get into the single elimination bracket. So I was really hoping I could do that. But with that tough loss from basics right out of the gate, had a decent amount of repair work to do, and then get the bot back in the box for a fight against a bot called Try Harder. Now, Try Harder also was at the RCE event, though I didn't fight them there. Try Harder has a huge vertical spinner, really awesome color scheme, like a kind of a Zelda Triforce aesthetic, though with the colors being completely like rainbowy. And I quite like the look of the bot. It hits really hard, but doesn't have the fastest, most agile drive. So my strategy going into this fight was pretty much to try and outdrive them, outmaneuver them, try and hit the wheels if I could, and just generally kind of control the match as best that I could, since I knew that with my slider not moving very fast, it was going to be hard for me to deal any real damage. So yeah, let's see how this fight went.
Bar mechanism to put that blade forward, and now it looks like it's on a rail system similar to a bot like Tantrum,
5,
where it just punches
4,
forward.
3.
Big advantage is you get to spin up your mask way in the back.
Robots,
And Try Harder, I think, is named that because it's triangular shaped and has a tri-bladed weapon. But let's see what happens. Looks like Shrapnel Mine trying to
already ripped
punch
the
in.
eye off of Try Harder. I gotta say, Shrapnel Mine, I'm liking this new design. You get to keep your spinning mass back inside the body of the bot until you're ready to deliver it forward, and it's low slung. You can get underneath an opponent like Try Harder and slam them into the wall.
I think it's a mechanically simpler version than he had in the past, and that's definitely easier to keep going throughout a tournament and less likely to have some sort of catastrophic damage during a fight. But I miss the old one.
Right at this moment, the entire fight changes. I tilt him up, and his spinner comes down right on top of my hub motor, breaking it. Now I have no spinner, and I'm forced to be a pure control bot from this point forward. And getting flipped, I can no longer self-right because the motor isn't sticking out enough for my wheels to touch the ground in the back.
Askew
It looks
inside
like
of the
that
rail.
hub motor for the weapon is fully out of its mount. Shrapnel Mine calling for an unstick. That's that blue light you see. Try harder. Looks like it's just maybe got a little bit of a damaged wheel or something, causing it to hop along.
Yeah. Perhaps high centered on something, or something's bent out of shape underneath the bot.
Still a lot of drive power on Shrapnel Mine.
Yep, it could still control this fight. Oh yeah, check out the wheel. It's got some chunks taken out of it there on
Oh yeah.
Try Harder. Shrapnel Mine doing a good job keeping Try Harder up against the wall and keeping their drive side facing the wall.
Honestly, so far, this is still going pretty well. Been able to control the fight for the last minute. All I have to do is avoid getting stuck somehow, and oh, now we're screwed.
You can see on Try Harder that right side of the drive is a little bit more mobile than the left.
You can also see that TPU fork is stuck under the UHMW kick plate,
Oh, that's not good.
causing those back wheels to be off the ground ever so slightly.
But that's all you need, and now you can see these forks are under the wall for Shrapnel Mine V2.
What's going on with Try Harder though? Are they mobile?
Maybe they're just letting them get counted out. I don't know. But it does seem like Seth Schaefer is bummed. Because he was doing really well in that fight and then ended up with a count out because the fork was stuck under the side rail.
So what went wrong in that fight? I'll try and show this on camera as well, but just to give a better demonstration, basically, I pushed Try Harder up against the wall. They're facing this way. Their blade is spinning, obviously, this way. And they ended up riding up on top of Shrapnel Mine. So even though the slider was like partially retracted, their blade was spinning like this, and it hit the edge of the tooth like that, like shoving the motor kind of inwards. And unfortunately, the hub motor is not designed to take a side blow like that when mounted only on one side. This hub motor is really designed to be mounted on both sides, but because I've got this unique slider system, I just thought it would be good enough with it being able to retract out of harm's way generally, to have it only supported on one side. For surviving its own hits, that does appear to work well, but a side force hit is pretty much the worst possible scenario. So unfortunately, the hub motor aluminum shaft just snapped in half, and that's why it was hanging loose during the entire rest of the fight. And because I had made a driving error earlier in the fight and gotten flipped and was unable to safe right because the slider had no power to it, I basically had to drive perfectly for the rest of the fight, and somehow I managed to get my TPU forks wedged under the wall seam and then got counted out, which I think is super lame. I feel like I probably could have won that fight had I stayed in it for the full 3 minutes, and I genuinely don't understand how TPU forks can get wedged like that, but I guess crap happens, and unfortunately I just kind of have to live with that. But yeah, definitely a really frustrating and disappointing loss. I didn't really care about the hub motor breaking nearly as much as I cared about getting stuck under the wall, because the hub motor I have, well, at least at the time I had many I could replace it with. Not so much right now, but I had plenty of spare hub motors in February, and I did not have another chance at a fight if I lost that one. So unfortunately, Shrapnel Mine went 0-2 at this event, and I wasn't able to get a grudge match in time. So that was pretty much it for that whole event. I just had to go home. So yeah, I guess the life lesson I can impart to you is try to finish your robot 2 weeks before the event, not 2 days before. And I know that I'm probably going to fail to do that many times in the future, but I tried to be a lot more cognizant of that going forward, especially after what happened in March with integration. Though once again, integration not working so great was partly a result of not getting parts in time, which was a bit outside my control. But still, I needed more time to make that robot good enough than I was able to give it. And yeah, so right now I do have 2 other events that I've signed up for. Right now, there are 2 other events that I've got myself signed up for. In June 7th, I believe, I'll be competing at NHRL again, this time with, I believe I signed up SSP, and I'm going to try and make an upgraded SSP 2.0 version for that event. And then I also, a couple weeks before then, in May, there is going to be another RCE event, which I'm going to be trying to bring Division version 4.5 to. And Division version 4.5, again, I said it has an event recap that I already have footage for, but haven't posted yet. But the last event that Division 4.5 went to, it didn't take any serious damage that was like irreparable or have any like huge glaring flaws. So I'm going to be sending it mostly the same for this event, so I don't have to do, you know, many weeks of intensive prep work, which is why I signed up for this one, even though I don't have a huge amount of time to work on it. But in the meantime, I'm just trying to keep my business afloat and figure out what I can do to keep products in stock and develop new ones despite the circumstances. So yeah, once again, if you want to support me, check out Patreon, link down below. I'd really appreciate your support, or at the very least, just leave a comment on this video, like it, and subscribe so you can see more like this in the future if you enjoyed it. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you and goodbye.